Okay, today I want to invite you to open your Bible to the book of Daniel, Old Testament prophet. Daniel, we're going to begin in chapter 2. What time is it? Does anybody really know what time it is? Does anybody really care? Now, those are lyrics to a song. Did you guys recognize that?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody really care what time it is in the bigger picture? We began last week a little mini-series on prophecy, especially as it relates to the signs of the times and the end times prophecy of the coming in again of Jesus. He said very clearly, if I go away, I will come again. Guess what, guys? That promise is yet to be fulfilled. But I think we're getting closer. And in the book of Daniel, we get this setup. It's a setup of God's chronology for planet Earth and for when Jesus will come back. Now, not only is it a chronology for when Jesus will come back, but also for when he came to the earth the first time and was born in Bethlehem. It's all in Daniel chapter 2, chapter 7, chapter 8, chapter 9. And today, what I want to do is I want to take a look at the prominent prophetic picture. Say that 3 times fast. You're doing it. I like that. Somebody's paying attention to me. The prominent prophetic picture regarding God's time, his chronology. Don't you kind of wonder, Jesus said he's coming back. Wouldn't you like to kind of know when? If you knew that he was coming back soon, do you think it would change how you lived? Somebody asked me once, how do we for sure, when Jesus returns, how do we for sure know that he's going to find us doing something that honors him? You know what the obvious answer to that is? Do always something that honors him. Whatever you do it all in word or deed. Do it all for the glory of God. Everything that you do, whatever you do it with all your heart to the Lord. That's the very first verse, Colossians 3:23, that I worked with each of my grandchildren to memorize. And I did the short kids version. Not the short kid, the kids short version, okay? I was always a short kid, but I did the kids short version. And that is, whatever you do it with all your heart for the Lord. And each encounter that I have that deals with each of my grandkids, and I was able to spend a whole week with 3 of them, plus another, a foster grandkid as well. And that verse does keep coming up. Papa, Opa, what should we do? We do this? I said, well, whatever you do. And they go, I know, do it with all your heart for the Lord, right? Well, how will you be sure to find that when Jesus returns, whenever it is, that you're not caught doing something that you shouldn't ought to do? Well, whatever you do, anytime you do it with all your heart for the Lord. All right. But we still want to know when Jesus is coming back. So in Daniel, we are given a couple of pictures. This is Daniel. Well, let me start with a little background into this character by the name of Daniel. Daniel was a young man, Jewish man, and in 586 BC, Babylon, the rising power in the east, conquered Jerusalem. Jerusalem, Israel, they had a solid, unified kingdom. Babylon came in, conquered the kingdom, destroyed the temple, knocked down the walls of the city. And in the old times, when you had city walls, that was your fortress, that was your security. When the city walls were knocked down, the city was penetratable. It was in jeopardy. Babylon came in, they knocked down the city walls, they destroyed the temple, the worship center for the Jewish people, and they took captive many of what we call the exiles. And those exiles, a large part of the Jewish community was taken into exile and brought into Babylon. some 400 to 600 miles away, depending upon where you were in Jerusalem, taken there. And of the people that they took in exile, they chose the ones that seemed like they had the most promise. They chose the young, strong ones. Daniel was one of them. He had 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You've heard of those names. These were 4 guys that were chosen of those who were taken captive into Babylon, that Nebuchadnezzar wanted to give special instruction to so they would learn the culture of Babylon. They would learn the religion of Babylon. The hope is that these Jewish guys would soon abandon any worship of Yahweh, of Jehovah, the one true God, the creator of all things, and embrace the multiplicity of the gods of Babylon. So they're trying to brainwash the brightest, the strongest, it even says the best looking of the young men. And so in part of that, they took these young men, they put them in a little training, and they gave them the king's delectable food, the delights of the king, the fatness of the king. And Daniel and his friends, who were very committed to worship their God, Jehovah, they said, we can't eat this stuff. Some of this stuff's not even clean according to our dietary laws. We can't eat it. And so they went to the manager and said, look, give us a different diet. Just give us vegetables and water. And the manager said, I can't do that. The king has picked you out. You're a prime specimen. He wants to give you the best of what he has to offer, and then he wants to train you and all this stuff. And if you guys are looking weak and sickly because you won't eat his food, you're in trouble, I'm in trouble. Daniel says, please, do a test. 10 days, just give us nothing but water and vegetables. Some of you guys know this story, right? How many of you know this story? Okay, well that's good because a lot of you don't. So I'm starting really on the bottom shelf and trying to lay down the foundation of what this book is all about. So the administrator finally says, okay, we're going to do this for 10 days. And so for 10 days, they give the Jewish kids, they give them this not a wimpy diet, I guess you would call it a healthy diet, something that I have not had the privilege of eating in 10 straight days in my life. I eat more like the king of Babylon. No. So at the end of the 10 days, these 4 guys who were eating this stuff, they looked brighter, they looked healthier, they looked vibrant, and so the king says, all right, let them keep eating that. If that's what they want to eat, let them eat. And he took Daniel, and Daniel so impressed him, and he put him to be trained with a group of people called the Magi. Have you ever heard of that? Do you remember the Christmas story? And you have the Magi that come from the east, and they come to King Herod, and where is he who was born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and we've come to worship him. You remember that story? Daniel gets thrown into the Magi. Okay, fast forward then to the episode that causes the problem with Nebuchadnezzar in chapter 2. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, begins having these reoccurring, troubling nightmares. And so he goes to his Magi. Now, these are the religious leaders. They're kind of superstitious, and quite honestly, it's a mixture of religion, astrology, and all of this stuff that was okay within the Babylonian culture. And he says, here, guys, I want you to tell me what I dreamt, and I want you to tell me what its interpretation is, because it's a dream that I can't get it off my mind. And you need to tell me what it is. And the chief of the Magi says to him, King, what you're asking for is impossible. We can't reveal to you what you dreamt. You tell us the dream, and we will tell you its interpretation. The king says, if I tell you the dream and you tell me the interpretation, I'm assuming you're all a bunch of crooks and shysters. So here's the deal. Either you tell me what the dream was and its interpretation, or I'm going to kill all of you because you're a bunch of fakes. I would say that would be a pretty tense time in the Magi meeting that came after that. So what are we going to do? And so Daniel and his friends, Daniel now thrown into this group, he and his friends start to pray. And so Daniel gets this confidence, and he's just a young man, probably somewhere between, as best we can guess, 18, 24 years old. This is a young man. And he says, send a message to the king. Tell the king, I will be able to tell him his dream. And it's like, Daniel's friends, do you know what the dream was? No, but God's going to reveal it to me. I know he will. And so they set this up, and then Daniel goes before the king. Chapter 2 in the book of Daniel, you can either follow along with me if you have the text open before you. It'll also be in the same version I'm reading, the New American Standard, behind me on the screen. Daniel chapter 2, verse 27. Wait a minute, let's see. Is that right? Daniel 2, yeah, I'm in chapter 2, verse 27. Okay, Daniel answered before the king, and he says, as for the mystery about which the king has inquired, neither wise men, conjurers, magicians, nor diviners are able to declare it to the king. It's like, nobody can do what you've asked us to do. We can't tell you what your dream was. However, there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries, and he has made known to King Nebuchadnezzar what will take place in the latter days. Before Daniel makes this confident assertion to King Nebuchadnezzar, God had revealed to him what the dream was and what its interpretation was. So, King, this is a dream that God has given you to show you what must take place in the last days. Now, I don't know about you, but my ears perk up. My ears don't often pick up. They perk up when I hear about the last days, the latter days, because I think those are more like the days we're living in. I kind of want to know what's happening in the last days. This was your dream and the visions in your mind while on your bed. And then he begins to describe it. He goes down to verse 31. Here it is. You, O king, you were looking, and behold, there was a single great statue. So a single statue, that statue, which was large and of extraordinary splendor, was standing in front of you, and its appearance was awesome. Now he's going to delineate between the different major components of the statue from top to bottom. The head of that statue was made of gold, fine gold. Its breast and its arms of silver, so breast, arms of silver, its belly and thighs, down a little bit lower, of bronze, down to the legs, its legs of iron, and then down to its feet and toes. Its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. Here's the dream. This is what you saw, and you continued looking until a stone was cut without hands, and it struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay, and it crushed them. Then the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, and the gold were crushed all at the same time and became like chaff from the summer threshing floors, kind of crushed into dust. And the wind carried them away so that not a trace of them was found. But the stone, this is a stone that shows up. It's cut, it says, without hands, and it's a stone that knocks over. How many of you like to bowl? I like to bowl. I used to like to bowl. I love it when you hit right in the pocket and it knocks everything over. This is a dream. The stone comes and knocks over this statue from bottom to top, crushes the whole thing, and then the stone that struck the statue becomes a great mountain and fills the whole earth. And so here's Nebuchadnezzar, and I can see his eyes just popping out going, how did you know that? How did you know my dream? You got my dream, you got it all, every single point. And then Daniel continues to say, now realize, this is a miraculous thing. The Lord has given Daniel the understanding of what the dream was and what the interpretation of the dream is. And it references, we're going to find out from Nebuchadnezzar's time, all the way to the coming of Jesus as Lord and King. This was the dream. Now, we will tell its interpretation before the king. Verse 36. You, O king, are the King of Kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the strength, and the glory. And wherever the sons of men dwell, or the beasts of the field, or the birds of the sky, he has given them into your hand, and has caused you to rule over them all. You, Nebuchadnezzar, you are the head of gold. So that's the top of the vision, the nightmare, the statue. You're the head of gold. That's what the head of gold is representative of. After you, there will arise another kingdom inferior to you. Now, that second kingdom represented by the second part of the statue, the breast and the arms of, did you catch the fine metal? Of silver. Then another third kingdom, the following part down, another third kingdom of bronze, which will rule over all the earth. Then there will be a fourth kingdom. So the bronze one is the thighs, the belly and the thighs of bronze. Then there will be a fourth kingdom, that's the legs of iron, that will be as strong as iron, insomuch as iron crushes and shatters all things. So like iron that breaks into pieces, that is the fourth kingdom, will crush and break all these into pieces. In that you saw the feet and the toes. Now this is the very bottom part of the dream. The feet and the toes were partly of potter's clay, which is an incredibly common feature, common material available everywhere. Partly of potter's clay and partly of iron. Have you ever tried to mix clay and iron? You ever been in a pottery class? And let's mix iron in with this pottery, with this clay. I got news for you, it doesn't mix. It's kind of like, what is it, oil and vinegar? Some of you like oil and vinegar, you know? And it's fun. I don't like it, but I like to put it in a bottle and shake it up, and then I like to watch it separate. It's really, really cool. Anyway. I do weird things like that. Partly potter's clay and partly of iron. Those are the feet and the toes. Now, a normal statue, let me just ask, so make sure that you're on track with me. How many toes do you think this statue of a singular man had? 10. Who said 5? Yeah. A one-legged statue, 10 toes. And that's going to be an important feature, because those 10 toes are going to represent 10 kings that are further defined in the book of Revelation as the 10 kings or regional leaders that come together under the rule of somebody that we're going to read about in Daniel's second vision this morning that we're going to look at. And that guy we affectionately know as the Antichrist. Okay? But in this 10-toed, feet and toed iron mixed with common clay, as verse 42, as the toes of the feet were partly of iron and partly of pottery, so some of the kingdom will be strong and some of it will be brittle or really weak. And in that you saw the iron mixed with common clay, they will combine with one another. Now, look very carefully at this next phrase. They will combine with one another, the iron, the strength, the common clay, represented in those 10 toes. They will combine together, what does it say? In the seed of what? The seed of men. Now, wait a minute. If this statue represents Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom and really all of the successive world kingdoms, they are all, get this, they are all kingdoms of this world, the kingdoms of men, the seed of men. But they will not adhere to one another, even as iron does not combine with pottery. And in the days of those kings, which kings? Those 10 kings at the end, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which will never be destroyed, and that kingdom will not be left for another people. Nobody else will inherit it. The king will never die, is the idea. It will crush, and put an end to all these kingdoms, but it will itself endure forever. Insomuch as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it crushed the iron and the bronze and the clay and the silver and the gold, the great God has made known to you, to the king, what will take place in the future. So the dream is true and its interpretation is trustworthy. Well, Nebuchadnezzar, completely blown away that this young exile, this young foreigner, would be able to interpret the dream plus tell him what the dream was, he ends up promoting Daniel and making him the chief of the Magi. Interesting position for a Hebrew who believes in the one true God, who believes in Yahweh and not in the multiplicity of gods of Babylon. Interesting position for Daniel to have, to be the head of the Magi. But anyway, he gets promoted. Okay, so here's the picture. You got all these kingdoms, and then you've got, finally, at the latter days, God's kingdom represented by the rock, the stone that comes cut without hands. I mean, man had nothing to do with it, and it knocks this thing down, it crushes it, pulverizes it, and then it fills the entire world. Let me try to illustrate this for you with something on the screen, little PowerPoint thing behind me. If you would look, go ahead, Wyatt, if you would. We have the statue of Nebuchadnezzar's dream. We got the head of gold, the breast and arms of silver, the belly and thighs of brass, the legs of iron, the feet and toes of iron and clay mixture. The head of gold represented, he said, this is you, King Nebuchadnezzar. The Babylonian kingdom was the head of gold. That reigned, it was the world kingdom from 606 to 539 BC. After the Babylonian kingdom fell, and who knocked them off? It was a combination of the Medes and the Persians. The Medes and the Persians became the second kingdom, world rule. We're not talking about localized, we're talking about the ones that actually ruled the known world. It was the Medes and Persians. Now later on, within the time frame that I have up on the board, 539 to 333 BC, I mean, that's a significant amount of time. That's over 200 years. During that time, there was internal conflict, and the Persians conquered the Medes. So the Medes and Persians kingdom actually became the kingdom of Persia. Now, the kingdom of Persia back in those days has a modern day equivalent landmass. It is the kingdom of where? Iran. Uniquely enough. There was a time when Iran was the world kingdom. It led the world's kingdom. Well, Iran was conquered then by the belly and thighs of brass, that is Greece. How do I know it's Greece? How do I know it's Medes and Persians? It's because Daniel 8 identifies those kingdoms. Here's the interesting thing. At the time of Daniel, which is 6th century BC, there was one kingdom that was solid, and that was the kingdom of Babylon. But Daniel's prophecy in Daniel chapter 8 actually says the next group is going to be the Medes and Persians. The next group is going to be Greece. It's going to come like from nowhere with a speedy response. Do you remember Alexander the Great? And in record time, he conquered the known world. And then it stops identifying them after Alexander and after Greece, because, I mean, this is 200 years after Daniel. And then you get to the fourth kingdom, the legs of iron, that was Rome. Rome was also the kingdom that was prevalent. What are the dates? 146 BC before Christ to 476 AD. Rome was the kingdom that was the world kingdom when Jesus was born. Okay? And then it says that after that, the bottom kingdom, the one that's mixed with iron and clay, that this kingdom is the future Antichrist and his 10-nation confederacy or 10-kingdom conglomerate in some ways that will be the end times kingdom. Now, Babylon, been there, done that. They're done. Medes and Persians, Up to 333 BC, they're done. Next, Greece. Greece left its mark incredibly in the world, but Greece as a kingdom, it's done. Next, Rome. Guys, Rome as a kingdom, it's done, but the influence of the Roman Empire continues to go on. Where is the capital of the ancient Roman Empire? Does anybody know? Rome. Yeah, it was not a trick question. Okay. The capital of the ancient Roman Empire was Rome until the latter days of the Roman Empire, when there was division. There then became a Western Roman capital, which was Rome, and then an Eastern Roman capital. The Western Europe capital, still Rome. The Eastern leg of the Roman kingdom. Anybody know where that capital was established? It was Constantinople. And it went through and beyond the 3rd century AD. Constantinople is modern-day Istanbul in Turkey. So the interesting thing, because we are told that the final kingdom of Antichrist will have in it some kind of influence from the Roman kingdom. We see that by the iron in the 10 toes, but it will have some sort of influence from the Roman kingdom. And the Antichrist is actually defined, we're going to see this in a few minutes in Daniel chapter 9, he is defined as the prince of the people who destroy the temple of Israel after the crucifixion of Messiah. You know which people destroyed the temple in 70 AD after the crucifixion of Jesus? The Roman people. The Antichrist is said to be of Rome, a revived Rome in some way, shape, or fashion. Now, we used to always think, and I remember when I was a teenager and I learned about this whole thing about Jesus is coming back, and an Antichrist is coming, and he's going to be the world ruler and all this, and he's going to basically be Satan incarnate, the Antichrist. And you would think, who could it be? And I remember back when I was a kid. I mean, some of you are as old as I, or maybe a little bit older. Do you guys remember Secretary of State Henry Kissinger way back? You remember that name? And I remember when Henry Kissinger, was talking about world peace and all this stuff and peace in the Mideast. And I was just a young teenager at the time, but I remember people going, could he be the Antichrist, I've heard people now say, could Trump be the Antichrist? Well, I got news for you. It wasn't Henry and it's not Donald. I've heard people say back when Hillary was running for president, could the Antichrist be a woman? No. So we need to be careful we don't get sloppy about just throwing that title around. But the Antichrist, anti being against, anti being in place of. The final kingdom in man's map of kingdoms will be led by this person that the Bible calls the man of sin, the man of lawlessness, that evil one, the man of transgression, the Antichrist, according to chapter 2 of 1 John. You've heard that Antichrist will come, and I tell you he will come, but even now I tell you that the spirit of Antichrist is here in the world. So the last kingdom, that one at the bottom, led by Antichrist. All right. Now, if that name is new to you, that title, just hang on with me. Just file it in your brain. In the next few weeks, it'll make more sense. But it's a world ruler who sweeps the world. Everybody wants to follow him, and he looks really good. I'm getting ahead of myself. In this particular prophecy, in verse 44, we already read it, it says that at the time of those 10 toes ruling the world, that 10-toed kingdom, the 10-king kingdom that is associated with ancient Rome, which is later called the kingdom of Antichrist in the book of Revelation, it's at that time when God's kingdom will emerge and conquer whatever's left of Antichrist's kingdom, whatever's left of the kingdoms of this world. Does that make sense? So what time is it? Well, it's time to get on the right side, that's for sure. And how close are we? I'm not quite sure from this prophecy, but we're going to take a look at the next major prophecy that's in the book of Daniel. It's in chapter 9. So I want to invite you to turn to chapter 9. And as you do, I want to remind you, in our introductory study last week of biblical prophecy and kind of what's a global look, insofar as a global look of what prophecy is, there are two major prophecies that run all the way through the Old Testament and on into the New Testament for prophecy number 2. Prophecy number 1, man created a problem when he sinned in the Garden of Eden. Prophecy number 1 was God would send a permanent fixer to the problem of man's sin. And that he would come and offer himself, as the book of Isaiah then later tells us, as a sacrifice for sin and the transgressions of the people. Our sin would actually be placed upon him. That prophecy that runs all the way through the Old Testament and then culminates with Jesus in the New is a prophecy that Jesus would come and fix the sin problem. So if that one doesn't make any sense to you, prophecy number 2 won't make totally any sense. If Jesus is not your sin fixer, then it doesn't make any difference that he's coming to rule as king. No, the most important thing for you to hear is that the sin that separates you from God, see, the Bible says that all of us have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Can anybody say, yeah, that's me? And we are separated from God. And we need a fix. And the fix can't be we just get more religious, we do more things right, and we hope to pile up more good things that gives us a better score. No, the Bible says if we have offended even in one point of the law, we've offended the law in one point, we are guilty as though we had committed all of the offenses. In other words, it's 100% pass-fail. I don't know about you, but I've been a pretty good guy, but I have failed. I am not good enough to make it into heaven on my own. Better than, I look at our leadership team, have all struggled with addiction and all kinds of stuff. I'm better than all of our leadership team. But I'm still not good enough. Listen, all of us are on the same plane. I only did that to see if you were still awake, okay? And I know I've got one of our leadership team in here. I wanted to see how he was going to respond. Yeah. But the first prophecy that runs all the way through is that there would be a permanent sin fixer. Jesus Christ came to be that. The second prophecy that runs all the way through is the kingdom that God had handed to Adam. Rule this world, subdue this world, and Adam relinquished that kingdom and gave it to Satan. And so ever since the Garden of Eden, because of man's sin and rebellion against God, Satan has been the controller of this world. Guys, I was going to point to that PowerPoint. See that blank screen? That's what Satan has given us. But listen, all of the kingdoms of the world have been built on the same greed, corruption, and power, seeking they haven't been the kingdom of God, we haven't seen what it truly looks like. Because the little experience that mankind had with it was forfeited when Adam gave it away to Satan. And Satan hangs on to it until the kingdom fixer, who is Jesus, returns. At his first coming, he showed up as the sin fixer. At his second coming, he is going to show up as the one who re-engages, the one who takes back and redeems man's thrown away kingdom, and he becomes the king on this earth for 1,000 years, and then ushers us into the kingdom, the eternal kingdom, heaven, of which he is the king forever and ever and ever. It's beautiful. That's Jesus. But note two prophecies that all the way through the Bible, the fix of both of them is who? Jesus. Let me ask that again, because either you're sleeping or I'm not communicating well. The fix of both prophecies is who? Jesus. Thank you. Yes, Jesus. We'll turn to Daniel chapter 9, and I want you to see this next prophecy. You see, this first one we've looked at to establish that when man gave away the kingdom to Satan, here's how it looks, here's how it's going to look. And after Rome, there has not been another kingdom who has actually been a world kingdom. We have a lot of independent, isolated, sovereign kingdoms, but we're talking about a kingdom that rules all the others, and there won't come another until that last 10-toed, iron and clay, foot and toes kingdom of Antichrist comes. It will come. Daniel 9 tells us more about that. But actually, Daniel 9, this vision that's called the Prophecy of 70 weeks of Daniel chapter 9, it's an amazing prophecy, and it has two parts to it. Go figure. The first part is when Jesus, or at this point, they didn't know the name Jesus, but when Messiah will come to fix the sin problem. And then the second part of this prophecy is when Messiah will come to fix the restoring God's kingdom prophecy. So in chapter 9, verse 24, he starts by saying this. And this is Gabriel, actually the angel Gabriel, speaking to Daniel and giving him the specifics of a vision that he is to write. And he does say that this part of this pertains to the last days. Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks, literally 70 periods of 7, have been decreed for your people. Now remember, Daniel is in exile. His people have been conquered. They've been removed. They've been brought over to Babylon. And the angel is telling him, here is what God has in store. Your people are still part of this plan. Your people are still part of the mix. Your people are still a sign of what God's doing and what he's going to continue to do. And I'm going to tell you today, the Jewish people are still that sign. We'll talk about that in a couple more weeks. But 70 weeks have been decreed for your people and your holy city. Now, his holy city was in ruins at the time. To finish the transgression, to make an end of sin, to make atonement for iniquity. By the way, that's a reference to the death of Jesus. To bring in everlasting righteousness, that's a reference to Jesus coming back as that rock that knocks over man's kingdom and then begins to fill the earth. To seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. What a mouthful. Daniel, 70 weeks have been determined for your people to accomplish all this. Somehow, the fix for sin and the fix of restoring God's kingdom is going to come through the Jewish line. So you are to know, oh, wait a minute. Let's go, Wyatt, go ahead if you would and put up that PowerPoint of the 69 or the 70 weeks of Daniel. There we go. Notice on my PowerPoint, let me get my stick. I have separated Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy into the first 69 weeks and then the 70th week. Okay, in Daniel, it says that 70 weeks have been determined for your people. First thing I want you to understand is, what is he talking about 70 weeks? Literally, the Hebrew word means 70 periods of 7. In the book, earlier in the book, Nebuchadnezzar went through a disorder we call boanthropy. That's what psychologists call it. Does anybody know what that disorder is all about? Here's what God said: because you have exalted yourself and you think the kingdom is your doing instead of me handing the kingdom over to you for this time, because you have so much pride, I'm going to give you the mind of an animal for 7 years. He says, I'm going to give you the mind of an animal for a week. And so Nebuchadnezzar was struck with this, according to psychologists, boanthropy, in which he walked on all fours. He ate grass like a cow, and he was out in the fields mooing and whatever else cows do. But here's my point in bringing that up. That was for 1 week of time, actually defined otherwise for 7 years. The picture of the 70 weeks prophecy is 70 periods of 7. which fit really in the way it's used in the book of Daniel into 70 weeks of 7 years, 70 periods of 7 years. Somebody who's really good in math, 70 times 7 is 490. If what I'm saying is accurate to an interpretation of this, it should say there are 490 years, 69 weeks, 70 weeks, 70th week. So you have 70 weeks, 490 total years. They are divided in two ways. Verse 25, here's when the first section, the 69 weeks start. You'll see that as I read this. See, so that you are to know and discern that from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. Remember, Jerusalem is in rubbles at this point. So from the time that a decree is issued to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until Messiah, the Prince, that is until Jesus, something about Jesus, there will be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. Again, mathematicians, 7 plus 62 is 69. Okay, that's why I've got a separation of 69 and then the 70th week. The 69 weeks is a unit. The final 1 week is a unit of 7 years. The 69 weeks is a unit of 483 years. Okay, so from the issuing of this decree until Messiah, there will be 69 periods. If I'm right, 483 years. Test me further. The prophetic year, or a normal year according to the Jewish perspective, was 360 days. Not 365 like ours, but 360. So, if 69 years, mathematicians, times 69 is 483 years, 69 weeks, 69 times 7, 483. How many days is that? 483 years? No, I'm not going to make you do that. It should be up there, huh? Thank you for popping that up before I saw it. Why? 173,880 days. That's pretty precise. This prophecy says, from the issuing of a decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, we know historically, go back, Wyatt, we know when that was issued. That was issued, go ahead and uncover that, Wyatt. It began, I don't know if you can read that, March 4th, 444 BC, King Artaxerxes of Persia gives to Nehemiah, this is recorded and documented in Nehemiah chapter 2 in the Old Testament, he gives Nehemiah the authority to go back with a group of exiles, go back and rebuild the city of Jerusalem. This is different from rebuilding the temple. This is when the issue was given, the decree given to restore and to rebuild Jerusalem. When did it happen? It happened on March 4th, 444 BC. It says that these 69 weeks, these 173,880 days or 483 years would begin at this precise moment. Okay, when do they end? They end, according to the next. Go ahead, Wyatt, and reveal what's the next. The ending point is... That would be just, there you go. So it ended on March 29th, 33 AD is 173,880 days. What happened on March 29th of 33 AD? That's the very day that Jesus Christ got on the back of a donkey and came into Jerusalem to the shouts of Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. What a coincidence! No coincidence. It's the precision of God's prophetic word. This is one reason why I am absolutely putting my belief in what God's prophecy in this word says in this book. Because there are precise prophecies. It started at the right point, a given point, and it ended at the exact day. Guys, that's not a guess. That's God's timing. What time is it? I don't know, but God knows. And he knows even the exact day. That's when Jesus was proclaimed as Messiah. Now listen to this. Back in Daniel chapter 9, verse 26, then after the 62 weeks, that is after the 7 and 62, the Messiah would be cut off and have nothing. So after the 69 weeks is complete, Messiah is cut off. What in the world do you think that might refer to? The crucifixion of Jesus, the rejection of Jesus, and have nothing insofar as the kingdom. And the people, watch this, the people of the prince who is to come, that's a reference we see in the next verse to the Antichrist himself, that final world ruler. The people of the prince who is to come, the Roman people will destroy the city and the sanctuary. They did that, and that was 70 AD under General Titus. He came into Jerusalem with an army that authorized the destruction of the temple. And it actually, remember when Jesus said to the disciples, this is just before he came to Jerusalem for his last stand and crucifixion. He told the disciples, they were looking and saying, what a beautiful temple. This thing is so ornate. This is so beautiful. How lovely. And Jesus says, I tell you the truth, that one stone will not be left on top of another. They will dismantle it completely. And then, of course, they ask the question, well, what will be the time of the destruction of the temple, and what will be the time of your return at the end of the age? And he goes on in Matthew 24 to answer that question. But the people that came in to destroy the city, they lit the whole thing on fire, and the city, both the temple was lit on fire. And you go, how do you light a temple that's made of rock on fire? And the way you did it is there were wooden beams all within it that served as shock absorbers and balancers for the rocks on top of each other. And as they burned, and the rocks were and then all this ornate gold was melted, came down and flowed between rock and rock. And so the Roman people dismantled the temple, rock by rock by rock, to salvage the gold that had melted. These people destroyed the city and the sanctuary. Its end will come with a flood. In other words, it'll be a fast and rapid ending, even to the end. Oh, and all of a sudden, we're jumping to all the way to the end. There will be war. Desolations are determined. Do you realize since 70 AD, when Rome sacked Jerusalem, when the Jews became once again a target for all other nations, there has been consistent war from that point on, even to the present, where somebody is trying to wipe out Israel. Did you know that? Will they ever be wiped out? Hang on to that question. We'll address that in a week or two. And then we get to, okay, that's the 69th week. Then we get, how about the 70th week? Well, Wyatt, go back, if you would, to that PowerPoint. The beginning of the 70 weeks also has, it's a beginning point. We've already got it. We've uncovered it. The mystery is known. It begins with a covenant with the prince. Leave that up, Wyatt, and just listen to this verse as I read it. He, that is the prince who is of the prince of the people who will come and destroy the city. This is somehow a Roman background guy. 1 John calls him the Antichrist. Paul calls him in 1 Thessalonians the man of sin and lawlessness. He will make, so it will be an individual. There will be a world leader who makes a firm covenant with the many for 1 week. The many always refers to people that are outside Israel. This will be on behalf. Remember, this is a 70-week thing for Israel, and he'll make a treaty with others outside of Israel. My goodness, wouldn't it be cool, so we think, if somebody came and made an absolute peace treaty that really worked in the Mideast? And right now there is so much religious hostility in the Mideast. The Muslims, the Jews, the Muslims, one of their practices is, it's been this way all through history, through their crusades and everything else. Now the crusades was the ones under the banner of Christ. I'm not sure I'd call them Christians. But the Muslims, when they came and took over the Mideast world, every place that the Jewish people had a center of worship, they knocked it down if it was still standing, or they confiscated it and are using it now as a mosque. And so on the Temple Mount, where once the glorious temple, Israeli temple, beautiful temple, Jewish temple stood, Rome knocked it down. And then when the Muslims came and conquered the area, they set up their Dome of the Rock Mosque on what they thought was the temple ground on the Temple Mount in Israel. Now, the interesting thing, back in 08, 09, whenever it was, last time I went to Jerusalem on a tour, the guide was telling us that further archaeological excavations have shown that the Dome of the Rock Mosque is not actually built on the site of the ancient temple. It's built on what would be known as the court of the Gentiles, which was an outer court, meaning that there is a possibility that at some point in the future, if there's peace between, somebody comes in and brings this peace accord between the Jews and the Arabs, especially the Shiite Muslims that want Israel's demise, if there's a supposed peace, there is the potential for the Israelis to rebuild their temple, because it will be rebuilt, to rebuild it right there on the Temple Mount, right next to the Dome of the Rock Mosque. Possibility, because archaeologically they could still build it on the ancient Temple Mount. Kind of interesting that they could both exist at the same time. I personally think that when he makes a firm covenant with the many for 1 week, that is for that last 7-year period, I think this is a Mick theory, it's not Bible, but I think included in that covenant will probably be the permission that the Jews can rebuild their temple on Temple Mount. Because it says in the middle of the week, he will put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering. You know what? For a Jewish person to actually do a sacrifice, an Old Testament type sacrifice, you know what's required? The temple. You can't do it without the temple. So that tells me that the temple, a rebuilt temple, will exist. It says in the middle of the week. Now, if a week is, like I'm proposing, is a 7-year period, what's the middle of the week? 3.5 years. He'll put a stop to sacrifice and grain offering, and on the wings of abominations will come one who makes desolate, even until a complete destruction, one that's decreed, is poured out on the one who makes desolate. In other words, the one who makes desolate is this prince who is to come, the Antichrist. He's the one that's eventually going to get destroyed, not the Jewish people. But let's just take that verse, go back to our little timeline up here. It does start with the covenant with the prince. In the midpoint, 7 years, 3.5 years is the midpoint. The covenant is broken, an end of sacrifice. And then it ends with his destruction, which comes at, one more click by it, ends with the return of Jesus Christ as king, as seen in Revelation chapter 19. It ends 1,260 days after that midpoint. All right, now some of you I have totally left in the dust, and you're going, wow, I've seen the chart, I still don't get it. Let me try and simplify. We are waiting for somebody to come and start the last 7-year period. The Antichrist, the emergence of Antichrist. That coincides with Revelation chapter 6. Coincides with what Jesus says in his prophetic statements, the Olivet Discourse, called that because it was given on Mount Olives, in Matthew 24. And Jesus specifically says in Matthew 24, when you see the abomination of desolation, or the abomination that causes desolation, as spoken of by Daniel the prophet. Now, he's referring to this exact passage. When you see the abomination that causes desolation, well, when does that happen? According to Daniel's prophecy, it happens exactly 1,260 days into that last 7-week period. It happens right at the midpoint. Jesus said, when you see the abomination of desolation, then there will be great tribulation such as has never occurred on the earth before or ever will after. So note that the starting point, just get rid of this guy. Now hopefully it's not Moses' stick and it doesn't turn into a snake and bite me. But listen, I think Wyatt maybe just throw on that next one. Here's where we are. Wait a minute. Just go to the last one. The last. And you are here. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You are here right now. Jesus has come. He's been the sin fixer and the sin bearer. And now there has been a pause. The 69 weeks ended. The 70th week has yet to begin. It will begin at a future time. When? I think we're getting really, really close, guys. And that 70th week, it's also called by some the tribulation period. Now, I will give you a disclaimer. The Bible never calls that whole 7-year period the tribulation. What it says is from the midpoint on, it's called a period of great tribulation. And that great tribulation, please understand, the nature of it is not God's judging the world. It's Satan working through Antichrist trying to wipe out Christians and Jews. That's when he institutes this thing called the mark of the beast, which technologically we're ready for that. That's when he institutes, or even when he arises, he either institutes or inherits a system, the Antichrist does. It'll be a one-world government. It'll be a one-world economy. It'll be a lot of the things that our government in the last decades has been pushing for, both Republicans and Democrats. Now, we've got a president right now that's not into globalism the same way that the last several presidents, both Republican and Democrats, have pushed us to. We've got a president right now that is concerned with America and America's health rather than the globalistic picture. So I think, my own personal opinion, I don't expect the Antichrist to arise during the next 3.5 years. But let's see what happens, especially at least with America buying into it. If America returns to a globalistic perspective of economy, of geopolitical perspective, then we're jumping right into what the Bible says is going to happen, a one-world government, a one-world leader who's going to bring incredible devastation and eventually be destroyed. Well, we have just clipped the surface in a brief flyover of what God has prophesied is going to happen. Jesus has come. The sin problem has been fixed. But the kingdoms of this world have not yet become the kingdoms of our Lord and Savior. But he is coming, and one day he will be the king. Now, you can experience his kingdom in your life. Well, what are you talking about, Mick? What does a kingdom require, guys? 3 things. Number 1, a king. Number 2, a subject. Number 3, a domain. Well, I have a king. His name is Jesus. He has a subject that I'm responsible for. His name is Mick. The domain is wherever, and I used to say in about the 6 square feet that I walk, I'm a little bigger now, so I say about the 9 square feet that I carry with me wherever I go. I'm the one responsible to have Jesus be the Lord of that space that I'm walking in. Does that make sense? And in that sense, we kind of carry the portability of God's kingdom wherever we go. But one day it's going to move from that mysterious form, and Jesus is coming. He's going to come back, and he's going to rule, it says, from Jerusalem. He's going to rule. All nations that are still surviving are going to acknowledge him as the King and the Lord. and we'll do homage to him. One day the whole earth will be filled with his glory. So let's get used to it now.